seated. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Scott O'Neill, would you please lead us? Thank you. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor to public comment. Time is reserved. I'm sorry, roll call. Close that door.
Director Vallejo? I don't know if he's on yet. Director Heyman?
Here.
Chairman Kaczynski?
Here.
Director Page?
Here.
Vice Chair Gleason?
Here. Did you get a here from John Vallejo? I didn't. He's not on yet? Thank you. All right, with that, I'll open for public comment. Time's reserved for the public to address the board of matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do I hear any comments from the public? Please come to the podium and state your name. There's a switch up there.
Water situation, and I have deep concerns about some of the way that we've been going about this issue, and it all started in 2014 when Jerry Brown instituted the Sustainable Groundwater Act. And I've lived in the Valley for about 40 years, and we never had a water problem or shortage, so-called. But when I heard the word sustainability is sustainable, I became alarmed because I remember as a teenager, I know I only have 2 minutes, living in Inyukern and Brown Road, or actually in Highway 14, seeing the LA Aqueduct Road. So it's common knowledge that LA was taking our water, but we didn't have a so-called shortage. We were talking about an ice age in my day. But anyway, what I have a problem with is now we're having the government deciding what to do with our water. And that's all because of the 2014 Sustainability Act, and that alerted me, and I have to give credit to some very wise people on globalism to alert me to the fact that we're losing our water rights. Now, I don't own a well, but I know people who do. I just know that when you have government and bureaucracy, our rights are being taken away. So now we have a sustainable, group of people who are making decisions, and I don't understand why we can't have LA build a desalination plant. Well, they say it's too expensive, but they're wasting their time and money on the so-called bullet train that never happened. And we have many illegal aliens that are coming in. I'm all for anybody for wanting to come over here and start a life, but to me that sounds kind of backwards. You can't even afford a water desalination plant. And LA's not our problem. I'm for local. We don't need government in the state of California into our water situation, but now it's become a statewide thing, and now we're going to turn it over to a bureaucracy that's not going to do the right thing. So anyway, I'm kind of off the cuff here, so this is just some of my ideas. Oh, if I have another minute, I wanted to explain that with the water, there's the simple person's going to have to cut back. I guess there's going to be a 55-gallon limit. That's going to be the next thing up the road. And I came to my attention about some powerful corporate people like the Resnicks and whatnot. They continue with their growth of Palm Wonderful and all that. However, that's actually not capitalism. That's corporate fascism, because they actually also use the government in their continuing on their water use, and they've donated. Resnicks donate a lot of money to different corporations, different people in the government. Anyway, that's my time. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from the public? Please step up to the podium and state your name.
My name is Lori Wagner, and I'm from the Inyukern area. I've lived in this valley since 1963. Since I'm limited to 3 minutes, I'm here today to address the subject of IWV water. First step, I make it short, only 3 minutes, right? Thanks. Most of us recognize that you folks are under a time deadline of January 2020, to submit a plan to fulfill Sacramento's concept of a water shortage concern. I'm here to put some sense into that mistake along with sensible actions. Last June, after sitting through your public meeting, I knew immediately that the first move must be to remove that mandatory filing date. I immediately wrote to my California representatives, political representatives, and requested same, along with all the justifications. I have brought copies of those letters with me today for your information. Perhaps they will help you along the same line. So far, they have done nothing, at least to my knowledge, that pursues eliminating this deadline. Now, also to my knowledge, I see you on the wrong path, advancing and spending horrific amounts of money toward a dead-end, no-solution path. Get rid of Sacramento's filing date deadline. Not extended, but permanent hold. Then you have the time to do it right. I'm reading this because if I weren't, it would go over 3 minutes. Second step, with a huge amount of rain and snow this 18 to 19 winter season, which is still going on through April and May, again, we have extended time to do what needs to be done to applying a permanent into perpetuity correction, not temporary, to the root cause of any man-made caused water problems down the entire eastern slopes of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. It continues from Mono to Inyo through Kern counties and then goes on down through San Bernardino, which I'm very familiar with. In our case, on this side of the Sierra Nevada mountains, it is not Mother Nature, drought, interfering with our water refill. Third step, there is a definite path to correct this mess. Some of our IWV property owners with their own wells know exactly how to do this, have prepared a time to do this, and said plan has been forwarded and submitted to the necessary political entities can make it happen. We can all work together. If you put the California government on permanent hold, that part is your responsibility, can be done, especially now that this state is receiving more water than it can handle. This is the perfect time to push this agenda. Thank you for your time and the extra seconds.
Thank you. Any other comments or from the public? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, approval of minutes, the board minutes of April 18th, 2018, and approval of expenditures. I guess there's 3 of them from RWG Law, City of Ridgecrest, and Capital Core Group. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move. Second.
Is there any discussion from the board on the consent calendar? Any?
Mr. Chair, just confirm that there is no director from Inyo on the phone.
I did a bit earlier. I guess he's still not there.
Okay,
I would think that he would probably.
I was just making sure.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'll go ahead and call for since there is none on the phone, Jim, do I still need a roll call vote on these?
No.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second. I'd like a vote on the consent agenda, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Boy, we're already up to you, Steve. Water Resources Manager's Report.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, it's going to go fast. I've got with me today Steve Johnson, Stetson Engineers, Water Resources Manager, our firm. It's good to see everybody again. We had rain all the way up. We had rain on the other down the hill and all the way up the hill and all the way through Adelantos. That's good. And where we didn't see rain, there were pretty big puddles along the road, so apparently got rain last night. So it is good. I agree with you that to get rain up here in May is exceptional, and look at least maybe 1 or 2 more storms coming. So that's all good. Good information. I've got Heather with me today. Luckily, she's a good driving partner to have on the trip up here. So I've got Heather with me today to go through the Water Resources Manager report. She's going to start with the poem. I wanted to give you a heads up. We have not modified the poem yet, although we're going to talk about a few different things around the poem. We have not updated the poem or modified it because, as you know, I have reported through the board and through the TAC meetings that we are working right now with the board. I called it an impasse, but basically we're trying to pull together some direction as a result of our work through the TAC and some of the modeling work, some of the scenarios we've tried to run going forward, some pumping scenarios. We've got 3 or 4 model runs that we've already done. So trying to coordinate that work along with the work that I've been participating in. I'm not an attorney at all, but I've been participating in the attorney allocation meetings that have been going on at least a couple times a month. Trying to pull those 2 groups together and come up with an implementation plan has been difficult, and we've reached, I called it an impasse, but basically it's a point where we need some board direction, and that's where we are right now. We're hoping to get that in the near future. We've got some things that we're working with the board on right now. I've talked about some model runs that we're doing. So there's some things we need to do, but I just wanted to let you know that we have not updated the poem online yet because it doesn't make sense to update it to see where we're going to be until we know what we need to do to get there. And we're still trying to figure out what we find out what we need to do to get there for our board discussions, which are coming. So I would expect by the next PAC, certainly by the next board meeting, we will have an updated poem that will actually lay out how we're going to complete this process. So with that, I'll let Heather sort of present the poem and some of the important things that are in the poem that we're having to deal with as far as schedule right now.
Thank you. Good morning, Board. As Steve was saying, it's pretty well documented by now that we were experiencing delays as we were negotiating with the attorneys and the authority and trying to come with some consensus agreement on what to model and how to proceed with the modeling runs. We have received the board direction on that the last month, and DRI, our modelers, have been working on those board-directed model runs, and we do have some preliminary results coming in at this time for those runs. Our goal is, and our intent, as Steve said, we're still we're producing the draft GSP, and we're still working hard on that, and our intent is still to submit on time in January of 2020. In order to do that, because of these delays, we are going to need to compress some things of the schedule and modify somewhat the process that's laid out in this poem. So the next draft poem, as Steve said, we haven't updated now. The next one, once we get final board direction, it is going to look different. We're going to have to be able to cut some things in order to meet this deadline. And not cutting projects, I don't want to imply like that, but just some of this process has to be revised and compressed in order to meet the schedule. Of course, the TAC and PAC will still be involved in this review process. I mean, they're critical to this, as you know, and so they will still be heavily relied upon. Also, just as a reminder and a refresher for those who don't attend the TAC meetings, there's still good technical work being done right now, and it's still being presented to the TAC, even though we are behind schedule on modeling and modeling impacts implementation. So those are critical items that we are behind on. There's still all these other Prop 1 tasks that we are reporting to the TAC. We are having good discussions. Just last month, we had presentations on land subsidence, on water quality, isotope sampling, starting the discussions on developing sustainable management criteria. So there's still good work being done. I just wanted to report on that too. That's everything on the poem, unless there are questions.
I just have a comment. I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that you're having that TAC meeting here, because it's a lot easier to sit back and watch and listen to those conversations. And I applaud the conversations we've been having on subsidence and water quality. I think we need to flesh out all those options and understand the whole thing. So I agree with what you're saying, and thank you very much for the city for allowing us to use this place. Thanks.
You're welcome.
take the bill back.
No, thank you. Ron, if I may add one other thing. Just one thing to add. As Heather mentioned, we're still organizing how we're going to modify the poem and our schedule. And in order to do that, she mentioned some changes that might be made. And I wanted to make sure, I've mentioned to Adam and to David already for the pack and the tack. Commitments have been made. We've made commitments that there will be, and I know there's been some concerns about the process right now in the modeling about involvement with the pack and the tack. But I wanted just to assure the audience and the folks on the pack and the tack that for the GSP, regardless of what changes we have to make in order to get the GSP to DWR to meet their requirements in January, there's still the commitment that there will be thorough review by the pack and the tack. One way or another, we will make sure before that GSP is approved, even if it's by DWR, before that GSP is approved, there will be thorough opportunity for input by the pack and the tack and the public. So, even though we're trying to compress things, I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. That commitment is still there.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no specific questions, we could skip the presentation of the poem. Yeah. Or is that me? That might be me. The next item is the Prop 1 status and schedule, and we have good news to report on that. On the 9th of this month, DWR, the Sigma processing grant side, finally approved our invoice after many rounds back and forth with them. It was a pretty arduous process, but we got it approved, and now it's in it's not in the review side anymore. It's now with their accounting side to process the payment. This first invoice, the total was around $373,000, but DWR does retain 10% until the end of the grant period. So this first invoice is for roughly $336,000. Like I said, it's now in payment processing. We should be receiving the check. It says late May or June on there. It seems like it's be more likely June at this point. But in June, we will be receiving that check. So. We are currently working on invoice number 2, and originally I'd reported invoice number 2 was only going to be October through December of 2018. Since there have been so much delays, they have extended it. We need to catch up now, which is good for us. It just means we have to do a little bit more work now to make it October 2018 all the way through March 2019. So we'll be basically caught up once we are able to submit invoice number 2, which we're working on. We should be able to submit that in the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
Great. And just
go ahead.
Go ahead, Heather.
Just commenting, the process now for these next invoices is going to be much smoother now that we've worked out all these issues with DWR. And these issues really wasn't exclusively for our grant. It was they were working out the issues with all the grantees that were submitting.
Yeah, just for the audience, so you know, between Don's office and Lauren working with Heather, it's been an experience trying to run these documents, some of this administrative process, and invoice and progress report through DWR. It's been a process. They effectively created a new group that review these Prop 1 funds. Even though they have people at DWR that know how to do grant funding, they effectively created a new group for this Prop 1 funding because this is a critically overdrafted basin. We're one of the first ones submitting and going through the process. So it's been going through the approval process. It goes up to a certain level, then it drops back down and goes to another level and back down. We've been going back and forth. But they've done a great job. We're there. We've got it approved, so that's huge. And Heather mentioned when we think we're going to get the first payment, which is good. Right now, it's in their payment department. It's amazing from the 9th till the end of June. It takes them that long to actually write the check. But that's what it really is. It's in their accounting department to basically just write the check. That's all that needs to be done. So that's good. The last thing I wanted to mention is DWR helped us in some ways, but in other ways they hurt us a little bit. They're helping us in that they recognize it's taken so long and that we're behind, so they requested that we combine 2 quarters. These are quarterly submittals on invoices. As Heather mentioned, invoice number 2 is going to cover October through March, so that's 6 months. So they've asked that we combine 2 quarters into one submittal. So that's good. So we're going to get a bigger submittal and a bigger payment. The downside of that is when they told us that, we were pretty much ready with the second submittal, which was for the 3 months. We had it pretty much done, pretty much ready to go. So we weren't able to submit that. We had to back up and then start working on the next quarter to combine it all together, which we're doing now. And I think, Heather, you'd mentioned that you're expecting to get that for your internally for your look sometime early next week, and hopefully,
Next week,
hopefully by the end of next week, we might be able to get it through reviewed by Lauren internally, and then get it off to DWR.
That's correct.
So we're following this thing right up with the next one, and it'll be for 2 quarters. So it should be a fairly significant invoice to the state. So that's it.
Is that it? Any comments or questions from the board on the payment invoicing? Okay, move along.
The next update is on the pump fee. This data on here is as of the 10th, and keep in mind when, I think Don maybe is going to talk about this later too, that when the payment that is reported on this slide, that's just a grab in time, and it's a continuous process of updating our payment system. So it may not exactly match what Don's going to report later. I just want to preface with that, but as of now, we do have 52 registered accounts that are fully compliant, and now we have 23 accounts that are not registered. So this number has jumped up some since the last report. The reason being, when we merged all the efforts the water district did in looking at aerial photographs, looking at more than just the database that we had originally looked at, once we merged those together, there were other accounts that are likely or could be non-de minimis, so they're reported here. It's not implying that all 23 of these are non-de minimis. Many that we have identified as potentially non-de minimis have come back, and then once we get registration or once we verify with them, then they get dropped off. So, but as of now, there's 23 accounts that we're still looking at that could be non-de minimis. We have been getting voluntary de minimis registration forms too, so I just wanted to report on that there has been participation with domestic well owners, and that's been very helpful to get their information. So to date, as of the 10th, when I pulled the number from our database, we've received $244,500 in the pump fee.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so just try to add little things.
That's fine.
Just for
I automatically look your way.
Just in general. On that too, and Don actually talked to us about that earlier. Talked to us about this earlier today. One of the downsides of having a fairly wet season this year, and including today, is that pumping is down. And pumping is down, which means assessments are down. So the projections that were made for income based upon the pumping that we expected are down a bit. Don has that information, but just so everybody knows, that income is down a little bit, and it very well could. Some of it may have to do with the fact that they're having to pay for pumping now. That could have something to do with it. The other one certainly could have to do with the weather and the fact that we're getting some rain, which is really good. So, just some more information.
Weren't there some letters sent out, legal? Jim, did letters go out to some of these? I guess at that time was more than 23. Trying to identify. Are you getting responses to those?
We have received.
Yes.
We sent 2 different letters out. We sent letters out to those that we thought were non-compliant, and then there was a larger, different letter sent out to a larger group, about 50 that we had recently identified, and some of those from the larger 50 group, we've since done further work, and we think that they're non-de minimis. So we continue to make contact with them, both through letters as well as email and phone in some instances. And the registrations are slowly coming in, and we're learning more and more about the property. Sometimes there's no well there, so we're going through the process.
Okay, great. So the numbers I'm seeing here are the most recent numbers of the registered accounts, and the 23 of that 23, there might be a few more in there that are not non-de minimis, but we're not sure.
Correct.
We're getting there.
They could
though.
be de minimis,
So that,
and then
seeing that
they
number
wouldn't apply.
changes as time goes on. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions about this? Move on.
Okay, the next update is on the SDAC projects, the severely disadvantaged communities. There are 2 components to these projects. The first is the residential commercial rebate program. The RFP for that has been out, and the deadline for proposals is 3 p.m. today. We have received one already so far that submitted early, but we'll be opening those and evaluating those after 3 p.m., the deadline today. The second one is the leak detection and water audit program. That deadline is next Thursday on the 23rd. And likewise, we've received one bid so far, and we know that there's several more that are submitting. We think there's going to be a total of 4 for that one. In the review process for these RFPs, we have allowed that Stetson is going to review and staff, and we can make recommendations to the board, but also if the board desires or if we want to recommend that maybe there's multiple potential candidates, we can recommend certain bidders come back to the board for an interview process. And that would be the board's decision if you want to pursue that route.
Whether the board would like to have presentations for any of these folks,
Yeah.
And I think that might be worth, once you narrow it down.
Okay.
And what's the time frame on these, roughly? Next board meeting, following board meeting?
The next board meeting would be fine, yeah, because we'll be able to evaluate everything.
Yeah, on the
before
agenda
then.
for the next board meeting, we
All
can be
right.
ready.
Thank you. I'm going to look your way, Steve. You got anything to add?
Yeah.
Or are you done? And then,
Only that somebody might ask what the bids look like, and we don't know yet because they're due at 3 p.m. today, so we're not going to open until after 3 p.m., the one that we got, if we get any more. So we'll know after 3 p.m. to make sure that there's no concern about it, somebody finding out what somebody else bid. So we're not going to open the ones that are due today till after 3, probably tomorrow.
Right.
And
And
then the
then
ones
one
that are
more
due
week
Thursday,
for the
we'll wait
others.
till after that to open those. So we'll be able to report that later on, too. That was it.
okay, if you guys are done, I'll ask the board if they have any questions or comments about this section 4 on the agenda.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, these are RFPs for somebody to run the programs, not RFPs for people wanting to spend the money. Right?
Correct, run the program.
Right. That's correct. Yeah, our anticipation is that our efforts will be very limited. We want to turn the whole program over to them and have them report it. So, yes.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Any questions? If I open to the public? Does the public have any comments or questions on number 4 item on the agenda?
I just would add one more thing, Ron. I just wanted to emphasize what Heather pointed out on, we don't have a huge report under the Water Resources Manager report today because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on our modeling. The 3 model runs, I think they're both done now. We're working on the results and preparing presentations. We got some preliminary stuff, but they're not going to be done until probably middle of next week, ready for that. So we'll let you know where we're at on that. The other thing to emphasize, again, what Heather pointed out, and that is through the TAC, for those who are not attending the TAC, as we now have it on TV, you can see it, want to look for it on TV on the video. A lot is still being done. There's a lot of work going on. That last TAC meeting, I think, was an extremely productive meeting. We had some extremely good reports by DIR. Those folks are very, very bright people. The isotopes presentation and the subsidence presentations were both very good. Those reports that they made are components of the GSP. They're going to write those reports for us, and they're going to go into the GSP. So we're working on that. We had reports on the TSS program, the Technical Support Services program, and well drilling. Some issues there. Heather reported on some of the monitoring wells. We have monitoring wells presented. The monitoring wells are going to be used for thresholds and measuring compliance with SGMA. Some of that information was provided to the TAC for input coming back. We got some input from Don Decker on adding at least one well, maybe more wells to that program. So a lot of work is being done through the TAC that you're not necessarily seeing here, but you can certainly see it on video. That TAC meeting, I'm always very optimistic when I go in. I think we're maybe 2.5, 3 hours. We can get this TAC meeting done. It went almost 4.5 hours, so it was a very long meeting. But it was solid accomplishments. We had work done during that whole meeting. So a lot of work was done during that TAC. I just want to make sure folks are aware of that. So if you want to come to the meetings, come to the TAC, or certainly look online. Thanks.
Thank you. And I guess we're ready to move on to item number 5, update on the finances. Don?
Did you have public comment?
Yes, I did, but go ahead if you have something to say on item 4.
Judy Decker. I wanted to bring up with you something that John Watkins had in one of his recent columns in the Daily Independent, and that was his tour of Ridgecrest and the number of vacant businesses he noted. And this is something actually more for the county and the city, but it's something for you to think about. What is the vacancy rate in this valley, not only of businesses, but of residences? If one drives around, for instance, in the North Brown Road area, you can see places that have been abandoned. You can see that in China Lake Acres also.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that this is related to item number 4.
No, I don't think that it is either. I don't see how it's related to the resource manager report.
It would be related to the SDAC issue, I think. It's something for you to think about.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, Don, you ready?
Sure. In your packet is the financial report for April, and you've seen this format now in the last couple of months, so I won't go through it in detail. But bottom line, when we go through our revenues and expenses, we had a balance of $33,454 in the account. You can see the invoices listed at the bottom. Those were unpaid coming into this meeting. We did approve on the consent agenda the RWG Law, the 2 invoices from the City of Ridgecrest, and the Capital Core Group invoice. So removing those from the balance leaves a remainder of $5,128.24 in the account. But I will say we are getting pumping fees in for the month of April still. So there will be a sweep at the end of the month into the account, so that's not going to be the amount at the end of the month. I do want to bring up one thing. If you look at the assessment pumping fee into revenues, $111,722. Director Page asked a question last night, sent me an email. I just want to clarify. I sent him a response, but just for the benefit of the board. And I don't recall if everybody got it, but last month Director Page asked a question. I copied and pasted some data from the database that Lauren maintains on pumping fees. And I want to make sure that you understand you can't match that to what's reported here. What's reported on this financial report is what's been actually put into the GA account at the county to date. What happens when we get the pumping fees in, Lauren has a database she's maintaining. She'll enter that data into the database. And then because it comes in over several days, an extended period of time, we do one sweep at the end of the month. We'll take that money that we get is deposited weekly into the account at Mission Bank, and then once a month it's swept into the county account. So it's a timing issue. There's money. This is what's been put into the account at the county. There is money right now in the Mission Bank account. So if you see a disparity or a difference in what's on the database and what's been reported on this report, it's a matter of timing and where that money is residing. So I just want to make sure you understand that. Any questions on the financial report? And we, as Heather pointed out, we are expecting $335,000 probably in June. So I'm anticipating, we'll get the invoice from Stetson for May, and that one will have to be held back as well. At this point in time, if you add the 3 invoices together that we're holding back from Stetson, it's roughly $283,500. So when that money does come in, we should be able to cover those invoices. We may be holding back one depending on the size of this next invoice, but that's our status.
Yeah, my hopes are that now that we got the process working with getting the payments, that once the next invoice is submitted, which you say is a couple weeks, hopefully that'll smooth out pretty much, and we'll see.
When this next invoice package goes in for the 2 quarters, I think we should be in the black.
Great, thank you.
For a while.
Any questions or comments from the board before I go to public? Okay, hearing none. Public,
so
please.
This is John Vallejo. I have joined the meeting.
Hey, John, you're back, huh? Or here, I should say.
Here.
All right, so do you have a comment?
Just big picture comments. Wondering if the board would like to consider discussing the big picture long-term budget at some point in the near future meeting. I understand that the long-term cash flow issues.
if I heard your question correctly, are you asking that one whether we want to do a projection out farther with discussion on cash flow farther into the future?
Yeah, I mean, the issue being that when this budget was approved, we knew it was going to be underfunded, and we talked about bringing those issues back to this board on an ongoing basis. And it looks like we're going to have some additional underfunding issues based on what I understand from Don's reports before. So I'm just wondering if we're going to take a big picture look at the budget at any time in the near future, at a future meeting.
You know, I'm a believer in that. It's always good to look in the future at these. I'm going to leave that up to staff if they feel they want to put together a projection that's farther out. But again, the major part of projection is payments from the state, and I'm not sure they could pinpoint that, although they might have a better feeling now. But I think that's something if staff feels they want to put together to present, I would not mind it, just to know, because there are things on here such as reimbursement to the county, and how are the pump fees going to change or possibly change. So that may be something we want to begin looking at. So, but I think I'd like to hear a recommendation from the staff in the future if we want to start putting something together like that. But I don't disagree with you, John. Is that okay, John? Is that a good enough answer? That we'll get it on the burner and see what we can come up with?
Yeah, just floating the idea out there.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any comments from the public? Oh, hey, Josh.
Hey, Josh Nugent on behalf of Mojave Pistachios and Nugent Farms. Just wanted to say that I appreciate the format that we've been using the last couple of months, and it's easier to follow. And so just, again, we would like to echo a little bit what was said of a longer-term projection probably would be good, but we do appreciate, a little more detail on the finances. So thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, Don, when he was making his report, was talking about how after we pay the invoices that were approved on the consent calendar, there would be a certain cash balance, and it was different than the number I got when I did my math. What did you say again? Would be left after we pay the law firm, the city, and Capital Corps?
$5,128.24.
Okay. Yeah, I got $6,775.
We'll go with your number.
Don just did it in his head real quick, so yeah. I like yours better. You want to take this over? So yeah. Any other comments for the board or public? All righty. We can move on to update on outreach efforts.
The only thing that I have with respect to outreach, I don't know if any other board members have anything, but last month's meeting, the staff was directed to do some outreach to the private well owners to try to encourage them to register their wells. We did draft a postcard, another postcard, and we sent it around. In fact, Director Gleason and Director Kaczynski reviewed it. It went through Jim's review. Dave Janis had a look at it, and just got the proof yesterday, so it's not available for the packet, but I'll pass out copies. We did incorporate, as you know, the PAC spent a lot of effort and had an ad hoc committee put together an outreach effort. And so we used the information. They had, I think, 7 or 8 bullet points in their memorandum to the PAC. We used that as part of this postcard. I'll pass out copies here just so you can see what it looks like. The previous postcard that we put out, which was general information about the Groundwater Authority, went to over 16,600 addresses, both in Kern County, Inyo County, and San Bernardino County. We're targeting the private well owners here, so we tried to filter that list down to where we were targeting, obviously, private well owners. Lauren and Diana from our staff put a lot of time into paring that list down. We went from, as I said, 16,600 addresses down to 2,711. We know there's less private wells than that for sure, but we're trying to make sure that we cover everybody that, for sure has a well and may have a well. And that does include Inyo County and San Bernardino County as well. So, as I said, we sent this proof over to, we sent the card over to PACREP for them to develop a proof, which you have. The quote on this we received yesterday along with the proof. For printing the postcards, processing the mail, and the postage, the total comes to $1,313.56 for those 2,711 addresses. So I think the price is really reasonable. You see on the postcard we refer to a new well registration form, which was developed actually by the domestic well owners. That was reviewed as well. A few just minor changes to it. Heather has it. She'll have it back to us this week. When it's available and we get this postcard out, they'll be able to download the form from the GA website. We will have hard copies available at the Water District office, and to make it easier for those in the Inyo Kern area, we'll take copies over to the Inyo Kern Community Services District and leave them there so that they can go there and complete them as well. My thought would be, we've had the PACREP do postcards for the GA before, and the processing invoices through the Groundwater Authority takes a little longer. This is a small business. I would suggest that the Water District go ahead and pay this invoice so she gets paid relatively quickly, and then we come to the GA, the Water District comes to the GA for reimbursement of this amount, if that's okay. So that's what we put together. I want to acknowledge again the domestic well owners for putting together the registration form, and also the PAC for putting together the outreach program that we've incorporated into the postcard. So, I want to acknowledge that the picture on the front came from Don Decker of a drill rig drilling a private well, and we did make a note on there that the photo is courtesy of Don Decker. So, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Any questions or comments from the board on this? The only comment that I have is I want to thank the PAC for putting together their recommendations, how we approach this. And again, and Don Decker with the well registration form, which the whole idea was to keep it simple, get as much information we can without scaring people away. And I think this is a good start. We'll just see what happens. I think what did you say? 13 roughly, 1,300.
$1,300.
Yeah,
I think the previous postcard that we sent out, which was covered by the Water District, was just under $7,000. Right. And that was paid for by the Water District.
This is money well spent. I think it's information we need to get out there. This has all been approved by legal and such, because I know we made references to potential grants rather than grants that existed, so it'll help us look for money. I like it. So if there's no more comments from the board, I'll ask for the public comment. Please step to the podium and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Sarah Zegers, and I'm a resident of the county, actually, here in this area. And I have a question. At home, I have a flyer from the IWV Water Agency that is for private domestic well owners. And it clearly states in that little flyer that private domestic well owners are not required to register their wells according to state regulations. I don't have a copy of it with me here today, but it came from the Water District here. And so how does that fit with this registration program that you're having for private domestic well owners? That's my question.
Jim?
The program is a voluntary, we're requesting voluntary registration by de minimis users. So it is voluntary. It isn't a requirement. We're just trying to obtain as much data as possible from the shallower wells so we can better study them.
Are you also, I haven't seen the items that you've sent out, but are you also stating on those items the same statement that was made in the flyer that according to state regulations, private domestic well owners are not required to register their wells?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, because the public doesn't have a
Yes,
copy
please.
of it, let me just read that section. De minimis wells are treated different than non-de minimis wells with respect to registration of wells. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, presently states that de minimis pumpers cannot be required to install metering devices or to report the amount of water pumped.
Thank you. Any other comment? So, Don, do you need an approval to proceed on this from the board, or I don't know that we do? I think we've sort of said to develop it and get it going.
Yeah, the wheels are already in motion. I just wanted to show you what we've come up with. Again, you've looked at it, Supervisor Gleason's looked at it, and I just wanted to make sure that the board was okay with the Water District paying in advance and then just being reimbursed that amount through the GA.
And thank you to everybody involved. I know it looks like it's a simple postcard, but it goes through a lot of hands back and forth and a lot of comments before it comes together. It takes a lot of work. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to number 7, board questions regarding Policy Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee reports. Now, I'm sure the board has read their reports. Do they have any comments or questions? And if you do not, what I would like to do is ask the TAC and then the PAC in that order if you have any questions or directions you need from the board. Because occasionally I see things in there where you're asked that, and so I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Is there something you need from this board to continue your good work? And let me preface that with I want to thank you for the work you're doing. As you know, I attend the meetings, and I have nothing but praise for what's going on, and to see how everything's progressed over these months. Call it years since the TAC and PAC has started. I see good progression in what you're doing. I see good participation. I see a lot of good work coming out of it, and I really appreciate the time and effort everybody's putting into it. So with that, now you're on the spot. Do you have something you want to ask either one of you? Any questions or direction? This is your chance.
I don't have any questions or concerns at this time. We have good communication, if we do, with Steve Johnson, and so. Thank you at this time from the TAC.
I would echo what Adam said on behalf of the PAC. However, I would take the opportunity to point out the second bullet under item number 7. I know you all read this, yes. But I want to reemphasize that the issue of growth came up under that task in number 7, the shallow well mitigation program and fund sources for that. And in the fund sources discussion comes up the issue of growth, and the PAC spent a good deal of time talking about this, and we took an action, as you see in the first bullet, on which way we were going to go on that, and then also wanted to request the GA begin discussions at the bigger level on what is the allowable growth we're going to plan for under the GSP in light of our primary employer and the concerns there for allowable growth in order to sustain national defense, community, et cetera. So that's a productive discussion in the bigger picture than just a fund source for a mitigation plan.
Okay, thank you. I believe that at one point when we were discussing putting together, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, we were looking at projections for water usage into the future, and I believe the Water District, and Don, you can correct me as well, don't we use about a 3% growth rate? Is that or how we did ours at the Water District for water usage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think at least this board member has always stated, always felt that modest growth within the community is a necessity to support the mission. And by modest growth, you were looking at the 1 to 3% growth rate or something like that. So it has been discussed, but
it's not so much. I mean, certainly a piece of it is what is the allowable growth, and 3% may or may not be the right number, but it's how do we manage the allowable growth to be consistent with that mission and where we think the community needs to go.
Okay.
So that's the particular discussion. You know, are there permits, fees, et cetera, that would go up for new or considerations for water or exchange land like some of the other basins have done with respect to controlling targeted growth. So that we strongly believe that's a good topic for the board to take on inside the GSP.
Okay, thank you.
And this is John.
Yeah, John.
It's an appropriate time. It's appropriate for me to comment. I mean, the regulations for developing a GSP require us to develop a water budget. As part of that water budget, we have to include the projected water demand. So this is obviously a pertinent topic for projecting water demand and growth. And I would be interested to see and discuss with the board how we would go about making specific or putting specific numbers to that water budget based on projected growth issues. So it is, I don't have an answer for the question, obviously, but it is a very important topic that has to be part of our plan.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Yes. Any more? Please do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Janice. Appreciate it. You and I have had this conversation multiple times. I think that this is the key question and the key purpose of a GSA developing a GSP. I think gone are the days when we can just say as a community that we want to grow. I think we have to develop, target, and understand and shape that growth the way we want to, with a science applied by a consensus of all the participants in that discussion. I think our growth today as a community needs to be truly understood, because we're going to be asking people to reduce things, and people are going to be suffering costs because of this stuff. And then on the other hand, we're going to be saying we need to grow. That balance needs to be clearly articulated, and everybody needs to understand exactly what we're talking about when we say grow as a community in the Indian Wells Valley anymore. So I appreciate Ms. Janice taking that up. I think all vested, important parties need to be involved in this conversation. There has to be a strategic vision that has to have a long-range objectives, short-range objectives. And the reason I say that this is the purpose, the best thing about the GSA is the whole purpose of the GSA is so that the state doesn't do what we're trying to do. That's the whole purpose of it. Because when the state comes down here and do it, if they're going to look at this as a math problem, and they're just going to solve the math problem, what we need to do is we take advantage of the opportunity we have to design and shape our future. And that's what this GSA is all about. So as we continue to look at water budgets and all the things that are important to satisfying our immediate objectives, we also need to look at growth, understand what it is, how are we going to restrain growth, how are we going to promote growth, where, how, what industries, and who's going to be involved. And we need to have a full community conversation about that. And I think the PAC taking a lead on that is a great place to start and get that going, Dave. So I've been waiting for you to say that. Thank you very much. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, so I'll thank David Jans for taking that on. No, the comment I'd like to make about that is I don't know how close the city and or the county are to redoing their general plans, but it sounds to me like that is something that needs to be considered in the general plans. So it looks like there'll be a lot of input from this group, and I think Dave's been elected now, too, in his group.
We're happy to from the policy standpoint, but
right.
There are big technical pieces that feed that.
Yes. And I sort of feel that's where that'll occur, because...
Can I say
something?
Yeah,
please. Yeah.
But that's exactly correct. And I don't understand what all those technical pieces are. But we need to start having these conversations so that we can all understand exactly what those technical pieces are, and then exploit all of them to come together with a plan that makes sense for our future. Thank you.
And last thing, and you're right in what your group said, is that how does new development fit into helping us fund the requirements for what the GA is about and what it's doing and what the requirements are for the community. It could be everything from types of fees or limited in size or replace. You're right. There's a lot to be discussed there. And how that occurs, I agree with Mick. I'm not the technical guy to tell you that. Now you're getting into planning and land issues and everything else. And that's why I'm hoping that with general plans being looked at, that we get closely involved with those. Thank you. And anything else from the board? John, you have anything before I turn over to public?
Nothing further.
All right. I'll turn over to public for comment. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Bruce Boyer. I'm a retired water resources engineer. I grew up in California and have been interested in California water and transport between areas for 50 years. I currently live in Virginia and own property in Ridgecrest and live here part-time. I think the work that's being done by this effort is essential to the growth and the sustainability of the community. I actually have comments on item 4, 6, and 7. On item 4, I think a complete plan is essential. I assisted Spotsylvania County and Fredericksburg in putting together a coordinated plan for the state of Virginia. I understand that water laws are different in the West and the East, but I think that a sustainable plan for a community is essential, and it needs to be long-term. The specific comment about the plan today is that it should be complete and it should include all of the elements that were originally planned. Even though it may be delayed, it needs to get input from the TAC and the PAC as planned. My comment on outreach is that all of the members of the community need to be heard. Well owners, landowners, commercial aspects, all of the participants need to have an input to the plan, and it needs to be coordinated. I agree with the state's effort to control it in California, but it's essential to the community to have a viable plan that includes the last set of comments of growth and population control and all of those kind of things, and all of those interests need to be taken into account, even if there may be delays. My last comment is on the PAC and the Technical Advisory Committee. I think those need to be the basis of any decisions made by this group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Decker, since I'm on the PAC ad hoc committee that discussed this, I offer you a few comments. You all know that in the simple terms, we are using far more water than nature is returning to us. And we have a certain number of people who all use water who live here. You have decided to charge a use fee to those people who are not de minimis users. And yet we read in the paper about growth, new projects, new businesses. Where do they fit into this when we don't have enough water for the existing population? If one looks at it strictly in a position of water in and water out. And that's how the topic got started in our discussion, because there are other areas of the country, our neighbor to the east, Nevada, that have water laws, water growth fees that apply to everyone. And this is certainly an issue that needs to come up and be discussed. It doesn't need to be put off. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. You're asking agriculture to pay a pump fee, and at the same time on the other side, you're allowing new growth. And as far as I know, there is no fee from the water district, the city, the county that says, okay, you can grow, but you are going to pay X number of dollars for the amount of water your project is going to need over time. The other thing I wanted to say is it's very obvious that in spite of the outreach that has already occurred, there are individuals in this valley who either do not believe that we have a water problem at all, that the state is holding their big hammer over our heads, or that it's somebody else's fault, but it's not ours. And you have a tough job. PAC did create an outreach document, but you have a tough job to convince people that we really, really, really do have a serious water problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Any other comments before I move on? Hearing none, I'll go on to the General Manager's report.
Okay, my report will consist of a progress report on the efforts of the Capital Core Group. This covers the period from March 28th through April 30th. So Capital Core met with Stetson, the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority, and ad hoc committee members during the month of April to receive formal briefings, additional information, and priorities. They've begun work on Task 1, which is determination of secure sources of imported water supplies, and also Task 3, which is identifying secure funding sources. Those two tasks were approved as the scope of work at the last board meeting by this board. During the kickoff meetings, project information was discussed and addressed, and 7 particular items were discussed. How much water will the basin eventually need to purchase? Is there a seasonality to these water deliveries? For example, more demand during the summer. What is the timing as to when these purchases will commence? Is there an opportunity to bank water within the basin, or would purchased water likely be stored somewhere else? What is needed for infrastructure? When is this information needed? Timeline and project deliverables? And how much is infrastructure estimated to cost? They have received direction to seek between 5,000 and 10,000 annual acre-feet of imported water supplies based upon current overdraft estimates. In addition, they were provided an order of magnitude infrastructure cost estimate from Stetson of between $56 million ranging up to $320 million, depending on a potential water transfer partner and the estimated infrastructure necessary to connect to their system. They will utilize that information as necessary in completing Task 3. They're also working on towards the main deliverable of the technical memorandum on imported water that's to be completed in late July. Also working on the government affairs due diligence, which is outlined in Task 3. And as far as Task 1, a little more detail, Capital Core has begun development of the technical memorandum outlining potential imported water supplies. To develop that memorandum, they're meeting with various water agencies, water banks, and districts in order to provide the Groundwater Authority with a comprehensive picture of potential imported water supplies, water banking opportunities, and delivery methodologies. Those meetings began in April and will continue through next month's project update. They're on schedule to provide the Groundwater Authority a technical memorandum by July 31st. As far as Task 3, preparation of the strategic funding plan has begun. Initial briefings were held in Sacramento with Assemblymember Fong and Senator Grove. In addition, they met with members of the Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, to discuss potential strategies. As part of those initial briefings and meetings, a white paper was developed providing a very broad outline of the issues and order of magnitude funding requirements. That paper was approved by the ad hoc committee, and potential funding sources are continuing to be researched and funding strategy developed. Based upon the construction timeline estimates provided by Stetson, they're approximating funding requirements to begin in fiscal year 2022-2023. Phasing of construction has not been determined, and therefore they cannot approximate the full timeline of the funding needs. Initial legislative briefings will continue through the months of May and June. As far as Task 4 board and staff meetings, they are planning to attend and be present at the board meetings on an as-needed basis and when key milestones and deliverables are made. And they're always available to answer questions. And in fact, Jeff Simonetti with Capital Core Group is here today to answer any questions you may have on this report.
Thank you, Don. Before I ask for the board, Jeff, do you have anything since most of that report was about what you guys are doing, do you have anything you'd like to say before I open up for questions?
Good morning, everybody. I think that was a pretty comprehensive report, so thank you, Don, for that. I just wanted to let everyone know as well, obviously the cutoff date to be able to get that memo to the board was at the end of April. But just want to let everyone know as well that both Todd and I were able to attend the Aqua Conference at the beginning of May, and were able to meet with a couple of water districts that have water available both this year and in upcoming years. So in the near future here, we'll be putting together a memorandum that will come out ahead of our main technical memorandum that's coming out in late July to give you a couple of options that we're seeing right now. Just kind of give you a better picture of what we're seeing in terms of the water picture right now. But other than that, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and open up to the board for questions. And John, I know you're there, so if you have any questions as well. So does anybody here have any questions for Jeff and/or for Don? All right. Sounds like nothing.
I do if no one else does. Does Capitol Corps have any intention on reaching out to Inyo County to better understand the issues that we've raised with regard to the inquiry into exporting water out of the Owens Valley?
Absolutely, yes. That is, we're planning on reaching out to you guys here shortly. So yes.
Okay.
Do you have anyone that you've already identified that you intend to speak to? Do you need to confer with anyone to get a better handle on who's out here and who would have information for you?
Well, certainly you and Supervisor Kingsley as well would be the first people who we were planning on reaching out to.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously we also, or maybe not obviously, but because we're the only county that does, but we have a full-blown water department with the director. His name's Aaron. I can put you in contact with him as well.
Okay.
My second question is, have we or have you already reached out to the folks at AVEC in California City, any water players out there to discuss the specifics that we've been looking at regarding AVEC?
Yes. So to give you a brief update, so one of the meetings that we had while we were up in Monterey at the Aqua Conference was with AVEC. It was just an initial high-level meeting. And as you know, the closest tie-in that they would have to our area is California City, which is approximately, I believe, 50 miles from here. So there are infrastructure challenges associated with getting that there. But yes, we have had initial meetings with AVEC.
Thank you.
All right. Any more from the board?
I have one question.
Sure.
So on the water suppliers that you've contacted thus far, are they short-term or long-term suppliers, or as far as the availability of water?
So that's a good question. There's a little bit of both. This meeting just happened last week, so we're still putting together the memorandum right now. The folks who we've met with have both potential permanent supplies as well as short-term supplies. And the reason why we focused a little bit more on the short term right now is that just because of the hydrologic year that we're having, there's a lot of water out there available on the market, just considering how much the State Water Project is providing right now, as well as the Central Valley Project. There's more water right now available than a lot of people can either bank or take advantage of. So that's something we're going to be sending in our initial memo to you guys on that.
All right. Thank you. Anything else from the public, from the board? All right. I will go ahead and we'll finish up. General Manager Don, you all done? Nothing else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're already on to closing comments. So where would we like to start? Commander, do you have anything? Nothing on that end?
No comment.
No comment? Mr. Gleason? Bob?
None.
Nothing down from that end, huh? Okay. I think that we're going to go ahead and close this open session, and we'll go into closed session. Let's Would 10 minutes be ample for everyone to use the facilities and head back? Thank you.